I am Angela, and today I'm going to be talking about the fact that 6 months ago I KonMaried my books, got rid of most of them, and just general thoughts about that. Do I regret it? No, I don't. I KonMaried my book collection, I guess a little bit more than 6 months ago at this point. I have books you see behind me, and then maybe about this many again. I should have taken probably like numbers or counted or done stats or something, but I didn't at the time. So instead I'm gonna just show you footage of my childhood bedroom. And these books that you see behind me had already been removed when this footage was taken. But basically what is left on the shelves are the books that I have, and then also the books that are behind me when I film. And then all of those shelves are full. Most of those shelves were double stacked, or at least the like little blue one with the clouds on it that I made with my dad when I was like 9 was double stacked. And yeah, I had a lot of books. I actually first started thinking about books and the number of books I have and getting rid of them about 5 years ago when Rosiana posted a video talking about whittling down her book collection to 50 books. It's a really lovely video. I'll link it below. I started thinking a lot about book ownership. I don't feel like I have the same reservations that Rosiana had about book ownership, but I've often felt, right, I've been very fortunate to have access to lots of belongings and just all of the various things, but I've often felt, since I was like a pretty young teenager, pretty overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that I had. When sort of the KonMaried method came out and like Marie Kondo was really blowing up, I was definitely interested because I was interested in having an intense method to get rid of my things. Basically, the Marie Kondo method has you only keeping objects that spark joy, and then also tidying, which basically means throwing out a lot of stuff, by category. So the first category is clothes, and the second category is books. And I actually attempted the Marie Kondo method twice because I got through to like step 3, which is papers. So I did all of my clothes, all of my books, and then got to papers, and then sort of stopped. And so then I went back and started again. What that essentially means is that I culled my book collection twice, and I did get rid of a good amount of books both times. At this point, I have many less books than I had. I feel like I benefited more from going through and doing my clothes. I've never been like a really big clothes person, and that was actually really beneficial. Since going through all of my clothes, I actually then went and sort of bought more clothes because I had like no work clothes and stuff like that. And so I actually feel much happier with my wardrobe at this point. With the books, it's actually something I don't really think about a lot. I moved to my current location before my books came, and so there was a while when I was like living with no books except for the like 8 or 10 books that I just always have with me. And that, not having like random books, and in particular not having like sort of comfort books that I could go back to, felt like something was missing. But in terms of like whittling down my book collection, I don't really have any regrets at all. It feels like a more manageable number of books. I like more the number of books that I have. Obviously, lots of people love having lots of books. My mother is one of those humans, and that is also a great way to be. I honestly maybe would feel more was missing if it weren't for the fact that I live in the same city as my mother, and she keeps basically every book she's ever read. So I have sort of access to many books, and then obviously the library, which I use a lot. But yeah, I was a little bit worried as I was getting rid of books that I would regret it. Don't regret it at all, which is encouraging, I guess. So I think a lot about this stuff in terms of that video that Rosiana made, and in her like having like sort of an actively curated library of 50 books, which I think is a really interesting and a really cool project, but it's not something I'm drawn to at this time. Like, I like having this number of books, but I'm not really afraid of getting more books, I say now, although maybe if I had more I'd feel differently. But this doesn't feel like an actively curated amount of books. This just is books that sparked joy in, I don't know, June or whenever I was doing this before. Mainly, I guess where I am now is trying to figure out, do I then go back and sort of rebuild my book collection? So for the last couple of years, the vast majority of my reading has come from the library. I've bought like a few books every year. And then outside of that, it's pretty much all been library use or stealing books from friends or stealing books from my mom. That is a thing that I don't totally know how I feel books that I've absolutely adored, like this book, which I talk about constantly, The Goblin Emperor. I went and I read this in the library and I was like, oh, this is one of my favorite books of all time. Like, realized within 30 pages of it. And so went and bought it so that I would have a copy. But there's a lot of books that I really enjoyed that I don't have copies of because I got them from the library, right? So I think about Station 11 a lot, is like one of those that I'm like, should I have a copy of Station 11? And so I guess I'm trying to figure out, should I go and buy books? And it's in this weird space. First off, because obviously I think that supporting authors is really important and supporting bookstores is really important. When I'm in this space where I really like getting books from the library and actually going and buying a book feels like this really big commitment, and I'm kind of anxious about it because I'm like, what if I don't like this book and then I own this book and then I have to get rid of this book? But at the same time, that means that there's a lot of books that I have read that I did really enjoy that I don't own. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what does purchasing books look like going forward for me? But in terms of like whittling down my collection up to this point, I think that this was really great for me. It was honestly kind of nice because it felt like I was recommitting to books, because most of the books that I had were actually books that I read when I was quite younger, because like as a kid I just read a lot and people would buy me books, which again, place of privilege. The nice thing for me about Marie Kondoing my books was, or KonMarieing my books, was that now I feel like a sense of ownership in that I have chosen these books as opposed to like these are the books that happened to me, which that is nice. But I'm still trying to figure out like what does book ownership look like for me going forward. So yeah, I'd be curious to know about how y'all feel about your books. Do you own a lot of books? Do you just own a couple of books? Is that something that you want to keep the same or you want to change? Have you done some sort of big book cleanse? Was that a positive thing? Was that a negative thing? Just like, yeah, any thoughts you have about book ownership, feel free to add those down below. And I hope y'all have a lovely day and happy reading.